Mindfulness is a buzzword on everybody's lips today. It seems as though everybody's talking about it. People say that mindfulness is the cure for addictions. They say that mindfulness will keep your relationships healthy. And they say that mindfulness in the workplace will make you more successful, will drive you, will push you forward. What we find most people coming and looking for help for addictions, anxiety, and depressions have often gone through stages of their life where they feel they were out of control. They feel that they had bad luck, bad things happened to them, that things got out of hand. And one day they turned around and had a look, and their life wasn't quite how they had planned it to be. And they found themselves unhappy, addicted, without cash, looking for relationships that they had lost, especially ones with themselves. Mindfulness is just the art, and it really is an art of bringing one's attention, openly, honestly, and with clarity to the present moment, to reality. It is bringing your attention to the gravity of life and the situations that we find ourselves in. So gravity, reality, these are things that people run from. These are things that people don't want to hear or listen to, not even from themselves. And of course, there's a consequence for the thinking that way. Mindfulness is something, it's a tool, it's a system that can be used to really improve your life on all fronts, whether it's success, career, happiness, joy, or even heavy things like recovering from addictions. Mindfulness is saying to yourself, I want something better. I want focus and clarity. I want to be driven to something more special, something with more quality of life. And it really starts at the very moment you open your eyes. Everything is being done for us for the 8 hours of sleep that we do. As I say in this course, your heart beats for you while you sleep. It doesn't do it with your help. Your food is turned into blood and energy and runs through your body without you having to lift a finger. So really, when we wake up, we often get in our own way, and we tend to do things by how we did them the day before. So every day we have 60,000 thoughts, problem being that the next day we will probably also have the same, more or less, same 60,000 thoughts again. So looking at focusing our attention on what we're thinking, how we're feeling, what we're doing in terms of behavior can really start or serve as a starting point, a foundation from which you can rebuild your entire life. We tend to gloss over the things that are not working for us. We tend to not look at what we think are negative sides to ourselves. Apathy, laziness, perfectionism turned into procrastination. All of these things are really things or themes that run in our backgrounds of our heads, really on automatic. So we tend to call it heuristic thinking when we just run on automatic like that. And running on automatic and not looking where you're going can lead you into many difficult situations that you don't need to be in. So welcome to 20 Keys of Mindfulness Mastery. Mindfulness is a catchphrase on everybody's lips at the moment, and simply refers to a state of consciousness or being aware of things, particularly in the present moment. So when we focus our awareness on something specific, you become mindful instead of mindful of clutter. We calmly acknowledge and accept our feelings, thoughts, body sensations, and actually use mindfulness as a very powerful modern therapy technique. Of course, it's been around forever under many different names. I think it was Ramez Sasson who said, "Your mind is your instrument. Learn to be its master and not its slave." So mindfulness mastery key number 1 is simply to master your mind. Often we need to go above our general daily thinking. Our stream of thoughts runs into about 60,000 thoughts every day. Unfortunately, those 60,000 thoughts are normally the same 60,000 as they were yesterday or last week. So to master your mind is to break the stream of thinking and go above, which basically means to transform your thinking. In a space of consciousness, you can respond and not react. You can listen and not talk, and you can also think and not assume. No technique, no communication or skill can come anywhere close to the effectiveness of being 100%. It's not easy getting into the present moment, but when you do, you'll see it's filled with joy and happiness. Being attentive is something that anybody can do. A second key to mindfulness mastery is mastering acceptance. If we can find something unacceptable, we can't find any peace. We try and change situations, we try and change people, we try and change what is happening, and ultimately we try and change reality. So accepting the moment as it is, as it comes to us, whether it's good or bad, is something that we can master to achieve far more peace in our lives. When we are disturbed, it is because we find some person, place, thing, or situation, some fact of my life unacceptable. So acceptance, as AA says, is the answer to all of our problems today. Third, we can master awareness. 3 specific types of awareness. First of all, there's contracted awareness. To describe that, imagine yourself sitting in a chair in a dark room. You're given a match, you light the match, and you can wave your arm around, seeing only little bits of the room. Can't see much of what's on the walls, can't see much of what's around you. We can move from contracted awareness to a second stage, which is expanded awareness. Imagine someone, instead of giving you a match, gives you a torch. You can wave that torch around the room, and you can see now what is on the walls and a lot of what is around you. The third state of awareness is pure awareness. In that state of awareness, imagine yourself sitting in a room made of glass with the sunlight streaming through the roof, the walls, and you can see everything around you in the room, and you can also see everything on the outside. Pure awareness is a form of mindfulness mastery that we can get to with some practice. Mindfulness sharpens your concentration, which means, not only are you likely to become calmer at work, for example, you're also likely to be more productive. So the more you see, the more productive you will be, and obviously the more successful. Living in the present moment is key number 4. Often our mind will take us into the past. Normally that ends up leaving us depressed or low. Our mind can also take us into the future, leaving us anxious. So staying in the present moment is really an art form. It is not something we need to change or control. It is just a mindful awareness practice of bringing your mind back to the present moment. The present moment normally leaves us with a feeling that things are okay. Not great, maybe. Not perfect, but okay. And okay in life is good. So don't let the future or the past drag you into a state of depression or anxiety. Mindfulness differs from meditation in the way that we are not just restful, peaceful, and quiet, but we're also alert and awake. So mindfulness is not an evasion of reality, but more a drawing an encounter with reality. Everything as it is noticed, and noticing is a gift. Malcolm Forbes said education's purpose is to replace an empty mind with an open one. So being open to everything and attached to nothing is a real central key ingredient to understanding what mindfulness is and what mindfulness can do for you in terms of a practice. Open-mindedness really does help you to grow. It helps you to strengthen your beliefs in yourself and helps you to really, really be honest. There is an honesty that comes with an open mind, because admitting that we're not all-knowing, that we're not always right, means that we can often find the truth behind things rather than what we expect the truth to be. An open mind is definitely not an empty mind. An open mind is full of possibilities and full of realizations rather than rationalizations. Mindfulness mastery key number 7 is about practicing non-judgement. Non-judgement really is about letting go of all our evaluations, of looking at everything in the present moment around us with critical eyes. The mind is always trying to keep itself safe, and that doesn't allow for much curiosity or creativity. It doesn't really allow for anything new. So adopting a non-judgmental stance can reset your mind into a more balanced state. Stepping out of non-judgmental mind actually allows you to see more clearly. It lifts the filters. It lets go of expectation. And as we know, expectation is always on its way to becoming resentment. A non-judgmental mind doesn't look at skin color. It doesn't look at creed. And it doesn't look for difference or separation. Letting go of the need to control is more of a destination that we come to, more of a realization than a choice that we make. There's very little that we do control in life. So coming to a place where we can understand and know that there's very little in our control can be quite comforting and can be quite a relief. It takes the heavy burdens off our shoulders. Buddha always used to say that mindfulness is a direct path for the purification of beings, for the overcoming of sorrow and lamentation, and for the disappearing of pain and grief, for the attainment of the way, for the realization of nirvana. Letting go of control means we can live our lives in peace, in the moment, doing what's in front of us. The Sufis used to say, do nothing, you are being done. If we're anxious, stressed, addicted, depressed, or we suffer from personality disorders, grief, sorrow, being asleep can be one of the most incredible times where our body can actually quieten down and be at peace. It's a time when we really do let go of control and we get out of the way. Our bodies turn bread into blood. Our bodies breathe for us without us doing a thing. Our hearts pump, and our mind is cleared of all unnecessary clutter. It's often when we wake up and we haven't done any work the day or the night before that we find we become instantly stressed. We start breathing shallowly. We start overthinking things, and we start trying to take control. Mindful versus mindful. Just remember, it's really, really easy with our frenetic lives to get your mind really, really full of information, images, pictures, conversations, judgments, and so on. Your mind can fill up, and it can actually feel quite overwhelming at the end of the day. So the idea with mindfulness is to try and become aware of the filling up of the cup, so to speak, and literally to turn off the tap and stop filling it up. And you can do that, of course, by first recognizing it, becoming aware of what's happening, and then choosing something different. So we stop taking the calls, we stop getting the SMSs, and we stop ultimately becoming overwhelmed from a full mind. So, people are saying I'm burnt out, I'm stressed, I'm not coping and overwhelmed. And it's often because we don't know when to turn that tap off. So having a full mind is not always the best thing to do, and it can lead to far greater negative consequences than we might think at first. So depression, burnout, stress, heart attack, disease, all these kinds of things are primarily, probably these days, deemed to come from having a full mind in one way or another. So mindfulness is in some ways being aware that your mind should be balanced and not always full. We can't have an open mind if our minds are full. So being mindful of that is probably a key, a core key to a mindfulness system within itself. So mindfulness, focusing, becoming aware, accepting that I cannot put any more into my mind, and then becoming willing to let things go and really take time for yourself, time to heal, time to learn, time to meditate, and time to relax and de-stress. That is probably should be mindful practice number one. Reducing anxiety can be as easy as 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Knowing anxiety really well myself, I know that tools to reduce anxiety, especially an oncoming anxiety attack or panic attack, is something that can be very, very useful. There's a method widely known around the world called the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 method, which tends to stop our catastrophic thinking, stops flight of ideas from just really taking over. And what it does is, it goes a little bit like this. Practicing the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 method goes a little bit like this. Start always any kind of mindfulness or meditative practice with deep breathing. Breathe in for 5 seconds or so, hold for a little bit, pause, and then breathe out for 5 seconds, which is quite a long exhale. And then again, in for 5 seconds or so, slight pause, slight hold, and then out. Long out for 4 or 5 seconds. So continue this pattern for about half a minute, until you feel your thoughts slowing down. Your body is very, very quick to respond to any kind of breathing exercise. First, acknowledge 5 things around you that you can see. Maybe it's a clock on the wall, carpets, floors, tables, chairs. If you're outside, maybe it's cloud moving past, the trees blowing in the breeze, the leaves, birds singing, many, many different sounds. However big or small, recognize 5 things and name these 5 things that you can see with your eyes. Then acknowledge 4 things around you that you can touch. It might be a computer at work or a chair. It might be your own legs, or it might be beach sand or grass. Doesn't matter what they are. Acknowledge 4 things around you that you can touch. Recognize these items and put names on them. Next, we're going to acknowledge 3 things around us that we can hear. Look for the sounds. It might be people talking, laughter, birds, wind. It might be the chime of a clock, anything. Even the hum of a fan, cars going by. Put names on these 3 things that you can hear, and then move on. Now, we acknowledge 2 things around you that you can smell. Breathe in deeply, and see if you can smell anything in the air. It can be tricky if you're inside, but there is always generally something. Breathe deeply. Look for smells, like a pencil, a desk, deodorant perhaps. Next, we acknowledge one thing that we can taste. It can be a taste of coffee that you've just had, last meal. It might be a last snack that you've had. Lick your lips and taste. You might taste saltiness, freshness. It might always be different for you. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 grounding technique may sound silly, but keeping it simple is often some of the best practice we can have. Every single time you're able to ground yourself with a simple, mindful exercise like 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, you'll be able to get closer and closer to creating new neural pathways that show your mind out of a limbic system response that there's nothing to fight or flee from, but rather you are safe, loved, and can embrace life with everything that it offers. So when the course is done, congratulate yourself and really, really take heed that doing something simple can often produce big, big results with some practice in the end. In the masterpiece novel called The Stranger, Albert Camus wrote, there is a scene with a man who is going to be executed in a number of days in a prison cell. Battling through, he suddenly, in an instant, feels a deep connection with things as he looks up and sees the blue sky poking through the white clouds above him in his ceiling. From that moment on, he vows to be mindful and present in every single thing that he does. He starts to feel deep, deep appreciation for each present moment. Eventually the priest comes in to wish him his last rite, but he wishes the priest away. Of course, the priest takes some time to leave, eventually does, and the prisoner is far more happy returning to his mindful practice in his cell, because what he realized was that he was far, far more alive, even though he was about to be executed, than the priest ever was. So mindfulness is definitely grounded in the art of paying attention to the world. Doesn't need to be significant, doesn't need to be lightning and thunderbolts and big bangs, but it really, really is a holy act, you know. It is an incredible thing to be more and more conscious in your life. Quality of life increases. You get to your core values. You find peace, gratitude, happiness, serenity. So that quality of mindful awareness and appreciation of the world really, really makes a lot of difference. It would be an interesting experiment to try to live one day, even an hour perhaps, being fully mindful of our lives and our surroundings. What I suggest is that you try being mindful for 20 minutes a day. Feel, see, touch, sense, listen to all the beautiful sounds. It can be incredible using just all 5 senses together in a 20-minute period. More often than not, something will come and be in communion with you. The world is full of so many living creatures. You'll notice birds, ants, as ridiculous as that may seem, butterflies, all kinds of things. And if you focus on anything intently enough, almost always it becomes really, really beautiful. So this is what certain people, especially in my religion as a Christian, would call Holy Communion. But it really is available to everyone every day. And all you need to do is mindfully tap in, concentrate, become aware, and then use your 5 senses. to really, really get stuck into the best that life has to offer. Making mindful decisions means using first the thought, this is what I need to do, then a feeling, how do I really feel about this? What does it entail for me? So it's thought, then feeling, and then outcomes, action. What is going to happen if I do this? And normally we go into black and white, either or thinking. We have very dichotomous, two-sided brains. It'll either be this way or it'll be that way, which more often than not is not true. Normally there's hundreds of different possibilities that could happen. So making decisions and taking time to feel them through can also be an incredible tool to get you where you need to be. Impulse, obsession, compulsion, all have no part in decision making. So a tool we can really use to get rid of those things is to literally think things through. Seldom these days do I respond to an important email straight away. Normally I take some time, think it through, and look at many different possible outcomes before I make any decision. Another incredibly important tool is making mindful decisions. Mindful decisions is something that you can master to make drastic changes in your life. Make better decisions, get better outcomes every time, only every time. So making decisions is something that we tend to do on impulse. We do it every day, we do it really quickly. And in fact, our brain becomes better and better at making quick decisions. As it learns something, again, it'll do it on automatic the next time. Ever lose your focus while you're driving? Forget that you were even changing gears, using a clutch. It's pretty much the same with your brain. Chopping vegetables at a meal, breaking up a salad, tends to happen on automatic eventually if you're not careful. And missing a moment when you have time as limited as we do is probably not the wisest thing we can do. There's an old story about a king and a sage, which relates to mindfulness many centuries ago. It goes a bit like this. The king was in need of a wise man. He needed to make brilliant new decisions in order to rescue the village from a series of problems that he had not been able to fix. So he went into town, sought out the wisest man. It wasn't long before he met the sage, who was reputed to be incredibly wise. And he asked the sage to come with him, live in the palace, and help him make the decisions that would positively affect the whole village. So the sage couldn't really refuse, as he knew it was going to create a whole bunch of good. So he thought to himself quietly for a while, knowing that he could not refuse such a big request of the king. So he said to the king, "Okay, I will come with you, but on one condition. I'll come and live at the palace as long as you give me one room in that whole palace with one key where no one else can go in. And I do what I do in that room is none of anyone else's business. It's my business." King says, "Well, what a request. I don't see any problem with that. Let's go." And off they went. The sage made beautiful decisions for the king. The whole village was lifted in a very short space of time, and things started to get better. Everyone, of course, loved the sage, and they loved the king as well. So things were going well until people started to gossip. The secret police were wondering what was in this room and why the sage would take some time to go in there every day, lock the door, and they wouldn't hear any noise, they wouldn't see anything, and out he would come alone. So they became really curious as to what he had in that room, and rumors started to spread. The king came to the sage and said, "Look, these are the rumors. We need to know what you're holding in that room." And the sage said, "Please remember, I came in on one condition, and I cannot change that condition." The king agreed with him, didn't see a big deal in it, and went away. But the secret police and all his council had a different idea. And the more they talked, the more curious they became. So one day, they got a second key, cut and made, and went into the sage's room. Both the king and the sage were alerted to this and arrived at the room at the same time to discuss what happened. The sage said, "Look what you have done. You've come into my room, and now I need to leave the palace." That was our deal. The king agreed and said, "We are very, very disappointed, but you can go. But please, before you go, tell us, why this room? It's empty. All it has is a few old rags as clothes in the corner and an old prayer bowl." And the sage said, "Well, king, I'll tell you." He said, "Whenever I needed to make one of those important mindful decisions for the kingdom, I would come into the room and I would put on my old clothes and I would take out my old prayer bowl and I would remember who I was, sitting in silence before I could make those decisions. And it would come to me with ease. Once I got the answers, after some time, I would come out of the room, go into the hustle and bustle of the kingdom and the palace, and share my ideas with you." So the moral of the story, of course, is the sage went into a quiet space long before he made any of these decisions. We definitely need to do pretty much the same thing in our lives. Anything without feeling behind it, without a second thought, and without having been made in a quiet space where it can be thought over and reflected upon, is probably not going to lead to the best consequences. We can learn a lot from the sage and the king. Truth is a core mindfulness mastery key. It is central, it is primary, it is right up there on any change cycle that I have ever had to go through with any client ever before. Truth, another word for truth, is reality, which of course is the place where they say you will be set free. The truth will set you free has definitely showed to be true again and again through almost every client I have ever treated in the last 20 years. Truth is certainly something that no one really comes into a treatment process with. Our brains are wired to respond to life when we get overwhelmed with things like denial, with diffusion, projection. You can name your defense mechanism. All of them are to get rid of the truth. The truth can be way too hard to bear for us. So what we do, we put off the truth with something as simple as distraction. But the problem is the truth not only will set you free, but the truth wills out too. The saying, "the truth will out," is definitely, probably one of the main reasons there's meaning and purpose for life. We're here to find the truth. We're here to find out who we really are. We're here to find out, who other people are, who God is, what the universe is, and what the purpose of it all is. So that, to me, is a good definition of reality. Being mindful of reality is a wonderful thing, and it comes about quite slowly. Go into a group therapy process, and you will see 5-10 people in a circle sitting and literally chipping out the truth and healing on the spot as more and more truth slips right through the delusion. So it is a beautiful thing to experience when people are able to take in truth and reality, stop blaming people, stop blaming parents, stop living in another time zone, the past, or thinking, things will be great and dandy in the future. without having to do the work on truth. So being mindful of the truth is something that can be a very, very simple process. Journaling is a tool that can help. Definitely things like therapy, group therapy, talking, sharing. These are all fundamentals of mental health. They're all fundamentals of any kind of therapy. And what you do, psychology was called in the very beginning the talking cure. And the reason was you spoke yourself out of non-truth. And the more and more you spoke and talked, the more and more you were cured. And that's been helping us for over 150 years. So being mindful of the truth is an incredible, incredible art to master. And questioning, as Einstein would say, is pivotal to finding the truth. Don't be afraid to be questioned, and don't be afraid to question everything. How am I really feeling? Really? I'm not just pissed off. I'm not just angry. I'm actually hurt, And why am I hurt? If you really, really truthfully go through it, probably because you've lost something. You've lost some self-respect. You've lost some dignity. You've lost an argument. And this is the way we move forward. I think it's been called by Plato, about truth, wandering through towards the divine. And that's what truth is. If you are mindful of it, it will indeed set you free. Whenever we talk about anxiety, we should know that whatever it's doing at its core is really teaching us about worry, unease, apprehension, and fear. Anxiety is all about foreboding and stress and agitation. And it's normally always about the future. Anxiety, normally always based in the future. Depression, normally always based on past experience, past thinking, being stuck in the past and not being able to bring yourself into the freedom of the present moment. So although anxiety represents, a feeling of unease, and it's characterized by our absolute fear of an uncertain outcome, it also helps us, paradoxically, to trust the process of life. Anxiety is definitely something that people overcome, can overcome, and many, many people have had anxiety, debilitating anxiety, where it has affected work and so on, and it really has changed their lives at the end of the day. Anxiety, like anything else we can experience on this planet, is not there to take us out. Disproportionate levels of anxiety will come, and you will be able to find a balance and find a way through anxiety. And normally there's a message that you can get from anxiety disorders, although different for everybody. When we learn to let go, when we learn to trust the process, when we learn to allow God, when we learn about hope, faith, trust, pixie dust, then we will see almost suddenly anxiety disappear. So physical symptoms of the palpitations, sweating, the stress can come in an instant, and they can go in an instant. So even anxiety can be treated as a messenger. Becoming mindful of that is really how most of the psychologists I speak to these days deal with patients getting through anxiety. They allow them to have an attack in the chair, they allow them to experience, and they allow them then, of course, to see that they're safe, that they are okay, and that they have come through it. And the results of this is great. People are healing from anxiety and reporting how, in hindsight, they feel it served them, changed their lives, pointed them in a different direction, slowed them down, made them stop chasing things that they shouldn't have, like the wrong people, the wrong careers. And anxiety, like everything else, has meaning. Remember, fear is something we often refer to as false evidence appearing real, or forgetting everything and running. Anxiety is based in the back of your brain, definitely associated with fight, flight, or freeze. And it is a place where you don't make decisions if you want them to be good ones. You wait, you breathe, you get through the anxiety, and then of course you allow the rest of your brain to function mindfully. You make decisions from a place in your prefrontal cortex, and making good decisions one at a time will eventually, of course, change your life. Mindful fear and anxiety. Some people might say that having fear and anxiety as mindfulness mastery tools wouldn't be a good thing, and in fact they might be negative. But to be honest, without fear and anxiety, you wouldn't live very long at all. Even things as perceptively negative as fear and anxiety are here to serve us. In fact, everything is. Everything becomes good, even though it might not appear so in the beginning. Normally we suffer. Normally we have growing pains, so to speak, growing suffering pains. And then we get to a place of more contentment, more fulfillment, and a higher consciousness and understanding, which, of course, is probably a large part of what the meaning of life has to do with. So anxiety is something that is here as a messenger. It is here to serve us and tell us to look out and be mindful. And it can shout that from the mountaintops. Anyone who's had panic attacks would know what that feels like. Stop or we will die. And becoming mindful of fear, which is essentially, the opposite of love, the opposite of good, and becoming mindful of anxiety, which is sensing your senses. Mindfulness is all about how we experience ourselves, how we experience the world, and how we experience God. So we know we've got 5 of them. Funny how we tend not to use them as much as we should, especially when it comes to negative things. But in terms of smoking cigarettes, many tests have been done where people have been put up to the task of quitting smoking, where 5% of all people that stop start again within a 12-month period. Not a great statistic, with 95% of people failing. But when taking some people aside who claim to love smoking, some of them claiming to never want to stop, and asking them to engage in a mindfulness exercise where they use the 5 senses, it's incredible how quickly thinking can turn around. People described cigarettes from something that they loved, that calmed them down, that was a social self-esteem booster, through to smoking is something that smells like stinky cheese and tastes like chemicals, just by using their senses. Other people described smoking as something that they thought about would kill them every single day, a thought that they tried to push out of their heads. Every time they coughed, people said that they felt like they knew they had to quit smoking. The time was running out. But yet, day after day, of course, they did the same thing again and again. This is what we know is addiction today. So mindfulness is rarely described and defined as something that is about curiosity, It is about openness, and it's about acceptance. So those three principles you'll hear all the time. Becoming curious, open, and accepting of what is something that you can't do when you're smoking and lying to yourself about the consequences. So becoming open to the senses and just realizing what you do, becoming aware, not needing to take action straight away, is a very mindful act. Mindful sensing is something that's an incredible experience, something that you can unfold as you go through any journey of becoming more and more conscious, becoming more and more enlightened, aware, creative, whatever you want to call it. People who are not on such a journey, you could call it a spiritual journey of sensing, looking within, looking without, really trying to connect to what is. You get people who try and dull their senses consistently and consecutively over time. They dull them with pharmaceuticals, they dull them with wine in the evenings, with all kinds of alcohol, drugs, marijuana, you name it. People are constantly trying to dull their senses. But of course that comes with a mindful consequence. Doing something like dulling your senses over and over time surely will make you more senseless. This is not rocket science. It's just putting the math together. Dulling your senses definitely takes away your mental capability, and then it digs deeper and takes away your emotional capability. If you want to test that theory, just look at someone who is impaired driving a vehicle. Look at how they speak, how they communicate, how they problem solve. People who've dulled their senses are normally very, very angry in split seconds. Definitely not sharp. So, anger is also one of those things, one of those catalysts and pointers you can see that come when senses are dulled. Whenever we are capable and we are practicing something that makes us more incapable, yes, even if it's smoking marijuana, drinking wine, taking painkillers, whatever it's going to be, if it's making us more incapable, anger will come with it, subconscious, conscious or not. So the cure for this is mindful sensing, which is, simply put, it's just coming to your senses. When we dull our senses, we become more senseless. This is the science of it. So there is always a consequence. If you want peace, you don't dull your senses to become peaceful. You rather become angry. If you want to become peaceful, you enhance your senses. You wake up and smell the roses, as they would say. Breathe, be in the present moment. You've heard it all before. Mindful sensing is an incredible core and definitely a mindful mastery tool that you can use rather than sitting outside and breathing in cigarette smoke or engaging in something that really half of you doesn't even want to do. So it is a tool we can all use and grow from. Practicing mindful kindness is another key to mindful mastery that is important for all of us to cultivate. Kindness is also something that we are not born with, just like empathy. We are not born with it, we learn it. And cultivating a loving kindness is a surefire way to get what you really, really need in order to thrive, be happy, be peaceful, and content in this life. So how we practice loving kindness, of course, is by getting involved and being of service to other people, getting over ourselves, stop being selfish, creating a decent sense of energy, not having to overtake all the conversation, all the space that is available to us when we meet other people. Loving kindness, mindful kindness also is about following the path of least resistance. Always pushing, fighting for what you want, just the word itself, means normally we're at war with ourselves. So following the path of least resistance definitely connotates acceptance, a flow and a sense of community, togetherness, and so on. Practicing easeful discipline with yourself on a daily basis is another key to being kind to yourself. Following daily routines, looking at schedules, and creating disciplines such as walking, 20 minutes for yoga, 15 minutes for meditation in the afternoon, whatever these things might be, are definitely ways we can be kind to ourselves. And of course, only once we've been kind to ourselves, we can be kind to other people. And then, of course, being mindfully kind also means to consume things mindfully. We don't have to buy in excess. We don't have to eat in excess or drink in excess or have excessive things in our space. Finding a zenful space with no clutter, for example, is another way of being gentle and kind with the self. Mindful consumption is one of the biggest topics on the internet today. You just need to Google it yourself. It's one of the most important mindful practices because just like plastic pollution, for example, we are not going to get there by recycling plastic, by picking up pieces on the beach, although it does help. 97% of the battle is actually consuming, purchasing, buying these items and bringing them home in the first place, where we have 50 pieces of plastic to give away. We never know where they're going to end up. So practicing mindful consumerism is also an act of kindness. Not taking too much that you don't need is also mindful. So identify your motivation to practice kindness. Look at it in the mornings. See what you want to give, and then know that that is what you're going to receive. Just like a mirror, that's how life works. Call it the law of attraction. Today, call it karma. 1,000 years ago, it doesn't matter which way we put it. As we give, so we shall receive. So kindness is another word for service, which is also a big part of 12-step program, big part of life as a program, and of course a big part of mindfulness itself. As we bring 20 Keys to Mindfulness Mastery to a close, for now, we can really understand that mindfulness is a way of being. It is really about showing up and not much more, but it's about showing up emotionally, psychologically, physically, and spiritually. There's something magical that happens when you put all four of those components of yourself, at least, together. Hard tasks, inspiration, creativity, all seem to flow far more naturally when you bring those four elements of yourself together, much like a north, south, east, west of ourselves. When we just put the whole bit of it together, we tend to find our direction, purpose, and meaning far easier. Mindfulness is really about showing up in all those areas, and it's also about being really, really present to your five senses, seeing things the way they are, not glossing over them, getting used to habits, which we call heuristic thinking or mental shortcuts. Really just looking around, take a second look at the beach, the birds, nature, and definitely yourself. For example, when last did you look into your eyes in the mirror for more than 15 seconds or so? So mindfulness is about hearing, really listening, smelling the roses, tasting the fruits of life, and of course, just moving forward through not only the five senses, but everything spiritual as well. So mindfulness is more or less all-encompassing and a holistic term, which means being mindful of everything inside you and outside of you. And it is a practice. It is not something innate. In the beginning of the course, we did say even something like empathy is learned and developed over a lifetime, empathy for others and kindness and so on, which you and I are developing as we go today. So we began with looking at mindfulness through acceptance, awareness, the present moment, noticing open-mindedness, and then we moved through to non-judgement, really being mindful of letting go of control. I very, very rarely will pick up anything psychologically or emotionally that takes me into a place where I cannot handle it in a day. So learning something as simple as adjust for today, daily bread, has been absolutely life-changing for myself and for the clients that I teach. So I wouldn't have guessed it in the beginning that something so simple could make such profound changes. But really, when you simplify, stay in the moment, give yourself one day at a time, make sure you having as many gaps as filling as many gaps, not glorifying work with 18 hours of what a lot of it would be mindlessness, and really trying to find balance in all areas of your life. This course in mindfulness took us through making mindful decisions, which also will change things very quickly for you. It took us through learning about anxiety and fear, sensing our senses, and then the 20th key of mindfulness mastery was kindness. So putting those together and perhaps listening to this once or twice might help you in just developing 20 very, very key pointers that will get you to where you need to be a lot smoother and faster than you might have. We hope you enjoyed the course. Namaste.